By year 2000, Putin became president, became the most powerful man in Russia. His first challenge, Chechnya, a war Yeltsin couldn't end. Putin promised to crush the separatists, and many Russians cheered. Civilian casualties are mounting. International pressure is growing. But Putin doubled down. For him, Chechnya was about restoring Russia's strength. The image of a strong leader, in contrast to Yeltsin's perceived weakness, resonated. Attention then turned to the media. Voices critical of the Kremlin grew quieter.
We are facing increasing pressure regarding our coverage.
NTV, a leading independent channel, became a prime target. The state, or state-controlled entities, took over. Freedom of the press, a fragile gain of the 90s, began to erode. Then came the Kursk submarine disaster, a moment that revealed a different side of Putin. Putin's initial silence was deafening. Criticism mounted.
Why isn't the government doing more? Unbelievable.
The tragedy exposed a lack of transparency and a perceived indifference.
We are doing everything possible.
Despite the criticism, Putin's core supporters remained steadfast. The early 2000s saw a surge in oil prices. Russia's economy began to recover.
Finally, things are looking up.
This newfound wealth provided Putin with crucial political capital. He used this economic stability to further consolidate his power. The concept of a vertical of power took shape.
We need a strong state to ensure stability and order.
The election of regional governors was abolished. They would now be appointed by the Kremlin.
We will follow the directives from Moscow.
This move centralized control, weakening regional autonomy. But a new challenge to Putin's authority emerged: the oligarchs. These powerful businessmen had gained immense influence in the 90s. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, head of Yukos, was the wealthiest and most outspoken.
A strong civil society is essential for Russia's future.
Khodorkovsky began funding opposition parties, a direct challenge to Putin. The Kremlin viewed this as a dangerous game. In October 2003, Khodorkovsky was arrested on charges of fraud and tax evasion. The trial that followed was widely seen as politically motivated. Putin sent a clear message: challenge the Kremlin, and you will be punished. Yukos, once a giant, was dismantled and its assets transferred to state-controlled Rosneft. The era of the independent oligarchs was effectively over. Putin began to articulate his vision for Russia, sovereign democracy.
Russia must follow its own path, based on its unique traditions and values.
This ideology rejected Western liberal democracy as unsuitable for Russia. It emphasized the importance of a strong, centralized state and the need for national unity under a strong leader. But the specter of Chechnya continued to haunt. In October 2002, Moscow was struck by a horrific terrorist attack.
Gunmen have taken hundreds of hostages inside.
Chechen separatists demanded the withdrawal of Russian troops from Chechnya. The Nord-Ost siege gripped the nation in fear. Putin's response was uncompromising.
We will not negotiate with terrorists.
After 3 tense days, special forces stormed the theater. A potent narcotic gas was used to subdue the militants. But the gas also led to the deaths of over 100 hostages. The operation was hailed by the Kremlin as a success against terrorism. But questions lingered about the use of the gas and the high civilian death toll. Transparency and accountability were once again lacking. The Nord-Ost siege further hardened Putin's stance on Chechnya and terrorism. It also strengthened the narrative of a Russia under constant threat, needing a strong hand. Then, in September 2004, an even greater tragedy unfolded. Beslan, a school seized by heavily armed militants on the first day of the school year. Over 1,000 hostages, many of them children, were trapped inside. The world watched in horror as the siege dragged on for 3 days. Negotiations proved fruitless. The militants' demands were extreme. The details of what triggered the final, bloody assault remain disputed. But the outcome was devastating. Over 330 people killed, more than half of them children. Beslan became a symbol of the brutality of terrorism and a profound national trauma. Putin's response to Beslan was swift and decisive, but also controversial.
We will strengthen our state to protect our people.
He used the tragedy to justify further centralization of power. The direct election of regional governors was abolished entirely.
This is a significant step backward for democracy in Russia.
Critics argued that Putin was using the fear of terrorism to consolidate his grip. But for many Russians, stability and security were paramount, even at the cost of some freedoms. The oil boom continued, fueling a sense of national resurgence. Putin successfully linked his leadership with this period of relative prosperity. By 2005, the transformation was largely complete. The chaotic 90s were a distant memory. A new, more controlled Russia had emerged. And at the helm, a leader who had risen from the shadows, promising order and strength. The new Tsar had consolidated his power, reshaping Russia in his image. The narrative of a strong, unified Russia under threat was key to this new era. The new Tsar was ready to take on the world. Internationally, Putin presented a different face, a pragmatic partner.
I looked the man in the eye. I was able to get a sense of his soul.
But behind the scenes, a growing mistrust of Western intentions began to take hold. The expansion of NATO eastward was seen as a direct threat to Russian security. The Orange Revolution in Ukraine was viewed as a Western-backed coup. This further solidified Putin's belief in the need for a sovereign path. Domestically, the memory of Beslan was kept alive, but in a specific way. The focus was on the heroism of the state, not the failures that led to the tragedy. The official narrative provided no space for dissent or critical inquiry. The first 5 years of Putin's presidency cemented a new social contract.
I'd rather have a strong hand and a full stomach than a free press and an empty one.
This was the core of Putin's appeal, a return to order after years of chaos. The new Tsar had a clear vision, and he had the power to make it a reality. He had tamed the oligarchs, crushed the media, and centralized power. And in doing so, he had fundamentally changed the course of Russia's future. The stage was set for a more confrontational era. The man who promised stability had, in his first 5 years, laid the groundwork for a more assertive and isolated Russia.